Hey y'all, and welcome to part 2 of my rereading and annotating Romancing Mr. Bridgerton vlog. If you haven't seen part 1, go check that out. It'll be linked in the description. If you're watching part 2 without watching part 1, a little weird. I mean, you do you, I guess, but I do have a little disclaimer for you. I don't get along with Julia Quinn's writing, and part of the reason I wanted to do this video is because I've only ever annotated books that I really loved, and I wanted to see what annotating a book I am more critical of looks like for me. So if you love this book dearly and you don't want to hear any criticism about it, this video might not be for you. Having said that, this is the book in the series that I have hated the least. There are some things that I like about it, and given how well they've adapted Cantonese love story in season 2 and the trajectory of Polin's story thus far in the show, Polin season is my most anticipated season of the show. I also think that this series is such an interesting case study and adaptation, and as a former film student, I really wanted to do a reread from that lens before season 3 comes out. So without further ado, let's get into part 2 of my reread of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Again, spoiler warning for this book, possibly also for seasons 1 and 2 of the show. And if you don't want to know anything about season 3, I listen to a fan-made podcast called What a Barb, a Polin podcast, and they have been keeping me up to date on any and all crumbs for season 3. Some of that stuff might make its way into this vlog, so tread carefully. Chapter 10 opened with Lady Whistledown's retirement, and I was so happy I was able to get a Lady Whistledown Taylor lyric in here. I wrote, "You should find another guiding light, but I shine so bright." The Lady Whistledown material in the book is so different from the show, and I feel like show Lady Whistledown has a lot of great Taylor Swift songs to go with her, but not as much in the book. This one feels a little bit shoehorned, but I think it works. Anyways, BookPen has been doing this for 11 years, and I've been saying this whole time, you can tell she's losing steam. Showpen, on the other hand, has only been doing this for 2 years. I feel like she still has a lot left to say. I'm holding firm to Pen not retiring Whistledown by the end of season 3. And if she does, I'll be disappointed, because I do think she's seen a couple of times how she's hurt people that she cares about with Lady Whistledown. And obviously, Colin is going to be upset when he finds out. I want Whistledown to be a source of character growth for Pen. And I want maybe like a new mission statement or like some sort of shift with Whistledown by the end of the season. I don't know what that looks like, but something to shake things up a bit rather than doing away with Whistledown altogether. Because again, it's such a big part of the show, and I just don't feel like Pen's done with it yet. Editing that back already. So I was watching this reaction channel earlier today that I found recently. Their names are Keren and Ketsia. I can't remember if that's their channel name too, or if I know it's their name. I'll link their channel down in the description for anybody who's interested. But they've been reacting to Bridgerton lately, and they are currently making their way through Queen Charlotte. I was watching their reaction to, I think, episode 5, and there's a moment where, so Violet has confided in Lady Danbury about her garden blooming, and she's very embarrassed about it, and the next time they see each other, Lady Danbury says, "Thank you for sharing that with me." Because we, as the mothers, the matchmakers, the leaders of the ton, Lady Whistledown never writes of our stories, of our hearts. And so, yeah, she's like, "Thank you for sharing your story with me." And it's a really beautiful moment. But this got me thinking about the idea of a shift in the direction for Lady Whistledown moving forward, where in addition to gossip, she starts to shine a light on members of the ton who are overlooked and underappreciated, which I think could be really interesting, obviously, considering her wallflower background. I don't know if this is anything, like, I don't know. What do y'all think? This is like totally not a fleshed out idea, but it just occurred to me that this could be something really interesting moving into presumably Benedict's season with Sophie. She's somebody who's overlooked. She's somebody who's underappreciated. Am I onto something here, y'all? What do y'all think? Could that be cool? I think it could be cool. So we're at another ball, and everyone's reeling from the news of Lady Whistledown's retirement. I don't really think any of that conversation is important enough to talk about, but Eventually, Lady Danbury comes over to talk to Pen, and she tells Pen that she'd like to help her get settled. She talks about how she married off all 4 of her children and even her nephew. And that got me thinking, was this where they got the idea for Violet's new paramour in season 3? I don't think we know yet how he's related to Lady Danbury, but curious. Lady Danbury hints at like maybe something going on between Pen and Colin, and Pen's like, I don't think it's gonna happen. And Lady Danbury's like, well, that's his loss then. Then Colin starts making his way towards them. Oh, do I get my beanbag chair back now? Thank you. Are you gonna get mad at me if I get in it? Of course I get back in the beanbag chair, and she's upset with me. Can I at least finish this chapter? All right, so where were we? Right, Colin's coming over because he has to talk to Pen after the kiss. But Cressida has an announcement to make before he can do that. And he's like, I can't imagine what she has to say that I'd want to listen to. I would kind of like for hero Colin to come to Pen's rescue with Cressida again like he did in season 1. However, I do also think a big part of Pen coming into her own this season will be standing up for herself with Cressida. So the Earl of Macclesfield gets everyone's attention. He's like, good evening. And there's this random drunk dude in the back who's like, good evening to you. As much as I'm not a proponent of all of this Lady Whistledown stuff, how great would it be if instead of some drunk guy, this was another Dankworth moment? Because the very little we know about him is very like himbo golden retriever vibes, and I love it. I can't wait for that. So Cressida gets up in front of everybody and claims to be Lady Whistledown, and that's the end of chapter 10. So we open chapter 11 from Colin's point of view, and he's twisted himself up in knots over how he handled the whole kiss situation with Penelope, and so he's on a mission to find her at this ball so he can fix things again. Oh, we do get a good line of inner monologue, which made him feel even worse, because if that was the case, then Penelope had been interesting and lovely and kissable years ago, and he hadn't the maturity to notice. So yay, he's finally got it. So Cressida makes her announcement, and everyone has their reaction. She starts walking over towards Lady Danbury to collect on the 1,000 pounds. Lady Danbury's like, I don't believe you. She asks Pen what she thinks. Pen's kind of on the spot. She's like, I don't know. Lady Danbury kind of pushes her a little bit, and Colin felt himself stepping forward. Lady Danbury had no right to speak to Penelope in such a manner, and furthermore, he didn't like the expression on Penelope's face. She looked trapped. So Colin offers Penelope an out, and at first she takes it, but then she changes her mind. And she says, I don't think she's Lady Whistledown, I think she's lying. I've always liked Lady Whistledown, and it would break my heart if she turned out to be someone like Lady Toombley. Oh, right, I forgot to mention that Cressida is a broke widow in the books. Again, I want a moment like this, where Colin can read Penelope so well that he's able to get her out of an uncomfortable situation. But he can also recognize the switch up and let Pen come to her own rescue. I'd love a moment where hero Colin knows when to hand over the reins. Lady Danbury turns to Colin and says, she's very clever, you know. And Colin's like, I know. Lady Danbury says, most people don't notice it. And he says, I know, but I do. Colin being so proud of Pen, but also winning Lady Danbury's approval in the same scene. I need it. Oh my gosh, y'all, how great would it be if we got something similar to season 1 when Lady Danbury gives Simon a reality check about like losing out on his chance with Daphne, but with Colin this time? That'd be kind of great, right? Lady Danbury tells Cressida that she needs proof, and Cressida's like, I'll have it for you in 2 weeks. And she leaves. So everyone starts speculating as to why Cressida would claim to be Lady Whistledown, and Pen's like, why would Lady Whistledown reveal herself? And everyone's like, well, Cressida's after the money, of course, she's broke. And Pen's like, yeah, but we've been all paying for Lady Whistledown society papers for years. Surely Lady Whistledown would be quite wealthy by now. Everyone admires Pen's clever observation, but it is time for the Featheringtons to leave. Colin calls for their carriage, and it's not until after they leave that he realizes he'd never apologized to Pen. But the night wasn't a total loss. After all, he'd spent the better part of 5 minutes holding her hand. What a simp. Love him. So Colin wakes up the next morning and he's like, shit, I still haven't apologized to Penelope. So he heads over to her place, but instead finds her hopping into a hired hack. And he's like, the fuck is she doing? So he has his driver follow hers, and he realizes she's heading into the city by herself. And at first he's like, maybe she's trying to go to my house, which is funny. But no, she's headed to a church. He follows her in, but continues to keep his distance just to see what she does. And she ends up hiding a Whistledown column in one of the prayer books. Then he's like, all right, time to make my presence known. And he takes her completely by surprise. I hate this scene so much. There's an inner monologue bit where he's like, but most of all, he was furious that she had a secret. Not so much that she kept a secret. She was Penelope. She was supposed to be an open book. He knew her. He'd always known her. I hate this aspect of book Colin's reaction, because what do you mean you've always known her? You've always known her passively, but you've never known her in any meaningful way until recently, and you're still obviously getting to know each other for real. Show Colin, on the other hand, I can understand this being a part of the betrayal for him. Book Colin, though, gives me an eye twitch. She tries to distract him by telling him that this is a church for writers, and so this is actually the perfect place for him to be. And he's like, so you're saying this is my church? And she's like, yes. And he's like, excellent. It is? Oh, yes, he says, with a smooth casualness to his words that was intended to terrify her. I hate Colin's inner monologue here so much. I hate it when he is actively trying to be mean to her or scare her. If you want me to root for a relationship, you have to, 1, make me like both characters as people, and this does not make me like Colin as a person. And 2, show me that they're going to treat each other well, and this isn't doing that either. I don't mind characters clumsily handling conflict, especially if they learn from it and do better in the future. But book Colin tend to fall into the same patterns when it comes to handling conflict in a way that really grinds my gears. So he goes to where she hid the column and is like, do you want to tell me what this is before I open it myself? And she's like, no, please, Colin, don't open it. And of course he does. And she runs out before she can see his reaction and realizes that her hired hack has left. So she waits on the steps for Colin, and he eventually comes out and is like, let's go. And he tells the driver to take the long way home. So I want to backtrack slightly to some of Pen's inner monologue. She thinks, why had she been so foolish as to think that he was the perfect man? She'd spent half of her life worshiping someone who wasn't even real. Finally, we have the moment in the book where Colin is mostly knocked off the pedestal that she puts him on. She still does it a little bit, but the illusion is thoroughly shattered now. Something I don't think we've talked about yet is how in season 2, I feel like we see little hints that Colin is starting to put Penelope on a pedestal as well. He sings his praises about how constant and loyal she is. And Luke has mentioned that there is a shift in the dynamic in season 3 where as Pen is gaining confidence, Colin's starting to lose confidence. And I wonder if within that he's putting Pen on a pedestal and he feels like he isn't worthy of her. And the Lady Whistledown reveal will knock Pen off that pedestal, and they'll finally be able to really rebuild their relationship on equal footing, knowing that they're not perfect people, that they've both made mistakes, but they want to grow from those mistakes, and they want to do that together. Bring out the best in each other, as Edwina says in season 2. Pen thinks to herself she had read 2 pages of his journal, that was true, but they hadn't been in a sealed envelope. Babe, you do not have the moral high ground on that one. Okay, so let's get into this fight. So Colin's like, I'm trying to decide what precisely I am most angry with you about because there are so many things, so very many things, my goodness, this dialogue, that I am finding it extraordinarily difficult to focus upon just one. I do think he'll take the news pretty much the same way. Yes, we have the Marina situation to factor in. I've mentioned a few other threads throughout this vlog that he might struggle with, but I don't think he's over the fact that Lady Whistledown revealed Marina, but I do think that he's over Marina at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how the Marina of it all factors into his reaction. I do think it'll mostly be about the fact that she kept this from him, that she's been taking risks with her safety, especially in regards to challenging the queen. Nicholas also said that there are a few moments throughout the season where you're like, oh, Pen, what are you doing in regards to Lady Whistledown? So I wonder if there's more that we don't even know yet about why Colin's not going to take this news very well. One last quote to make note of in this chapter's portion of the argument. Yes, of course, you're bloody Lady Whistledown, and you've probably been laughing at me for weeks as I insisted it was Eloise. Again, we talked earlier about this being a potential parallel of how things went down with Eloise last season. Again, I'm not convinced that they're going to go this route with Colin in season 3, largely because of Luke saying that the season is going to be unpredictable. But if they did keep that aspect of the book, I would hope that Penn would have learned from that mistake. But considering how badly things went with Eloise, that could make her even more scared of him finding out. Anyways, back to the end of the chapter. Oh, I forgot to mention that the Lady Whistledown column was Penn debunking Cressida's claim of being her. And Colin's like, why couldn't you just let Cressida get away with it? Colin, if you know Penn as well as you claim to know her, you should already know the answer to that question. But we'll talk about that more in the next chapter. Chapter 13, the fight continues. So Colin's like, why can't you just let Cressida take the blame? And Penelope corrects him, the credit, and Colin insists the blame. This fundamental disagreement about what the issue at hand here even is really causes the argument to go in circles, and it's infuriating. And I hate it because Colin, again, really isn't trying to see things from Penn's point of view. They're kind of having two different arguments here as a result, which is why they can't really come to a resolution. Colin tells her, you will be ruined, Penelope, ruined. Do you understand what I am saying? Patronizing her a little bit there. Don't love it. But Colin's main concerns here are Penn's safety and her reputation, which is interesting in the context of the show, because in the show, Colin has already shown very little regard for her reputation. So if he tries to throw that in her face in the show, she can swing right back at him with his own words. I will say the What a Barb podcast hosts have been discussing how Colin and Penn seem to be returning to that garden where he said those famous last words quite a bit throughout season 3, and how it seems like they need to keep going back to that garden until they can fix what went wrong that night. Kind of like a Groundhog's Day situation without the literal time loop, which I find very interesting. So with that in mind, will the Lady Whistledown reveal be the final hurdle that they need to jump in order to repair the damage to their relationship that they will now both have contributed to and really move forward? I did manage to get a Tortured Poets lyric in here. Since Colin is so concerned with Penelope's reputation, I wrote in pink for Lady Whistledown, I'll tell you something about my good name, it's mine alone to disgrace. Back to the argument, Colin says, people will stop talking to you, and she cuts him off. She's like, people never talk to me. Half the time they didn't even know I was there. How do you think I was able to keep up the ruse for so long in the first place? I was invisible, Colin. No one saw me, no one talked to me. I just stood and listened, and no one noticed. Here's where Colin annoys me again. He's like, that's not true. And she's like, oh, it is true and you know it. You only deny it because you feel guilty for being one of the people who overlooked her. He tries to deny it, but she's not having it. Now, to an extent, I do think that Chopin is a bit more calculated in keeping her alter ego from the people who are closest to her. She's less passive about it than her book counterpart. This element of guilt being the major factor, though, I think stems from the shallowness, or maybe more like infantile nature of Book Polin's friendship. I do think Show Colin will feel a bit guilty for not having picked up on it by himself, but he'll feel more betrayed that she kept so much from him than anything else, I think. There's a point in the argument where Penn's like, you talk as if she were a separate person, and he's like, well, excuse me, if I still have difficulty reconciling the woman in front of me with the Harridan writing the column. Don't like the name calling in an argument. Big ick for me. Don't want that in the show. More annoying stuff he does. He denies denigrating her accomplishments, and she's like, that's exactly what you're doing. And he's like, no, I'm not. And she's like, well, what do you think you're doing? And he's like, being an adult. This man is being a literal child with his argument tactics. Penn lets him have it though. She's like, don't you dare speak to me of adult behavior, you who run at the very hint of responsibility. And he's stunned. He's like, I can't believe you're speaking to me like this. She's like, you can't believe I'm doing it or that I possess the nerve to do so. Love this moment for her. But what's interesting is that it's not really necessary in the show version of this scene, whatever that ends up looking like, because we already got Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton in episode 1. Penn has spoken to him like this before. Again, show Polin is 10 steps ahead of book Polin. He asked her what she meant by him running from responsibility. She's like, why do you think you travel so much? And I do like the idea of her forcing him to dig into the aspects of his wanderlust that he's a little bit afraid to confront. However, not in the context of this particular argument, because one, he's being willfully obtuse, and two, it's in a cruel way towards Penn. He's like, and that makes me a child because you're not willing to grow up and do something adult that would keep you in one place. Like what? Like get married. And he asks, is that a proposal? This is him being deliberately cruel towards Penn. Once again, illusion shattered. She brings up his age, he brings up her age, and she's like, unlike you, I don't have the luxury of asking someone, and unlike you, I don't have a massive pool of prospective suitors, so I've never had the luxury of saying no. And he continues, and do you think your unveiling as Lady Whistledown is going to increase the number of your suitors? Again, being deliberately cruel towards her and making baseless accusations about her motives. I understand being concerned about her safety and her reputation. I think that's valid, but you're not going to get through to her if you don't at least try and make an effort to understand where she's coming from. She's not trying to reveal herself as Lady Whistledown. She just doesn't want her childhood bully taking credit for her life's work. That's understandable, I think. A note on her inner monologue. Maybe all this sadness building up inside of her was for the death of a dream. Her dream of him. She'd built up the perfect image of him in her mind, and with every word he spat in her face, it was becoming more and more obvious that her dream was quite simply wrong. This is the strength of having her perception of him change at the end of season 2, because they get to start rebuilding from 301, not halfway through the season. Yes, they'll still have obstacles and setbacks. Like I said, she still needs to be knocked off his pedestal, but we are halfway through this book, and she's only just now starting to see him for who he really is. He's concerned she's going to incite the ton even further in their hunt for Lady Whistledown after this column, and like, that's fair, but she's like, it's just a chance I'll have to take. And he's trying to get her to take him seriously, and he's like, do you have any concept of money and how much people want that financial reward? She's like, dude, I'm Lady Whistledown. I have more of a concept of money than you do as a third son. That didn't work, so he tries again. As my youngest sister said, there is also the glory. And that may very well be why Cressida is pursuing this ruse. And Penn's like, Cressida's doing it for the money. We have established in season 2 that Cressida has an ample dowry, so it's probably safe to say she's not going to try to claim to be Lady Whistledown, especially since it's her 3rd year on the marriage mart and she still has no proposal. This would probably actually hurt her prospect. They continue, and Colin's like, let Cressida get away with her scheme. She's the answer to your prayers. She's like, you don't know my prayers. Indeed, he does not. He doesn't even know her as well as show Colin. They keep going back and forth. He keeps not listening to her, and at some point he thinks she's gotten through to her because she sighs instead of responding to him, and he's about to rip up the paper, and she's like, no, I did not agree with you. I just sighed, and I did not give you leave to interpret my sighs. Moreover, she can always rewrite the column even if he tears it up. Eventually, they reach kind of a stalemate, and Penn's like, Cressida's reputation wasn't ruined by claiming to be Lady Whistledown. And he's like, well, no one believed her, and besides, she's different. Colin, to his credit, does realize that he stepped in shit as soon as he says it. Penn's like, I see. He's like, no, you don't. And Penn's like, no, Colin, I do. I suppose I just always hoped you were different. Yikes. That sounds a lot like, it just never occurred to me that you of all people could be so cruel. She goes on to say, I thought you believed in me, that you saw beyond the ugly duckling. Again, he'll have proven himself to her on this front, at least by this point in the season. He emphatically rejects her assumption though, and says, you're beautiful. I don't know how, I don't know when, but you are. Colin, I need you to not take almost 250 pages to realize that Penn's beautiful. You idiot. Penn has some inner monologue about how she knows she's not beautiful. I twitch. But the way he looks at her in this moment, she felt beautiful, and she'd never felt that way before. I just drew a broken heart next to that line. Again, I don't want the constant belittling of her appearance in the show. I don't think it will be as much of an issue because Nicola is beautiful, and we all know it. And if the show tries to convince us and her that she isn't, we're all going to be very pissed about it. I mean, we already know that she's been been belittled for her wardrobe. And from the clips that we've seen so far of episode 1, she probably doesn't feel very beautiful in those moments. She looks very uncomfortable and very upset. But I think we're gonna nip that issue in the bud pretty quickly. At least I hope. Okay, so now they're making out in the carriage, and while the Lady Whistledown issue remains unresolved, we have this turning point of, this doesn't matter right now, what matters is showing you how I feel about you. And this is why we love the carriage scene, because fucking finally, they're not finally fucking. My dad might watch this video. They're just making out, but finally. At one point, she giggles because she feels his hair, and she's like, it feels like Eloise's hair. And he's like, I beg your pardon? And she tries to be like, it's nothing. And he's like, oh no, you must. I couldn't possibly continue without knowing the reason for the giggle. The dialogue here is a little bit cheesy, but I do want to see this kind of lightheartedness in their moments of intimacy in the show. Okay, so they keep making out, but then they reach Penn's house and they're like, oh shit, we gotta make ourselves look presentable. And she's like, I can just sneak in. And he's like, that's not gonna work. And she's like, no, really, I can do it. And he's like, that's not happening. He asks if he looks presentable, and she's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, good. And he gets out of the carriage, and she's like, wait, you're coming in too? And he's like, of course. And then, for God's sake, Penelope, are you going to marry me or not? This is our beloved Colin chaotic proposals only Bridgerton. I don't need it to be the same as it is in the book. In fact, I kind of hate that he yanks her out of the carriage while he says it. Because, spoiler alert, for the next chapter, she falls flat on her face. I just need as much chaos Colin as possible, and it is especially important for the proposal. Penn is so taken aback by Colin's proposal that her foot at the time halfway out the carriage found only air, her left hip found the curb, and her head found Colin's toes. Poor Penn, I hope she doesn't get any physical injury due to Chaos Colin's antics in the show. Colin gets physically injured by himself, but we're excited for that scene. It's gonna be a great scene. So Colin's like, dude, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm all right, just surprised. And he's like, why? And she's like, are you being serious right now? And he's like, well, what did you think I'd say? And she's like, literally anything else. On the one hand, it is so funny to me how Colin is just so certain about this split-second decision he's made, and he's so pleased with himself too, that he's like, this is the obvious thing, of course I'd ask to marry you. On the other hand, I do wish he would take a second to recognize the emotional whiplash he's just put Penn through. The best part about Chaos Colin is that he doesn't even realize he's being chaotic, and it's funny when he's oblivious to other people's confusion, but not Penn. I generally want him to be more aware of Penn's emotions and reactions to things, but he can ignore everyone else. Penn is the only person that matters. Why? Because she fell first, but he fell harder. God, I'm gonna love this season so much. I need it now. Back to the book, Colin's like, okay, we're going in, and Penn's like, Colin, are you sure? No time like the present, he said almost jauntily. Again, I love how Colin is just so pleased with himself. He's like, this is the best decision I've ever made. And he is on a mission and completely blows past Penn and Briarly's attempt to warn him about the situation he's about to walk into, because it is Tuesday. And on Tuesdays, the entire Featherington family gathers for lunch. Before we can get to that, though, we have to go back a little bit, because we switched to Colin's point of view, and there's a very important passage. Marriage to Penelope was an eminently sensible idea, and surprisingly appealing as well, if their recent encounter in the carriage was any indication. We do love Colin being in love with Penelope before he even realizes it. And I do think the show so far has done a great job at keeping to this trait of his, because that man has never looked at Penelope Featherington in a platonic way in his entire life. So Portia, of course, is thrilled to see Colin, and she tries to get him to spend time with Felicity. He recognizes that there's some sort of nonverbal exchange happening between Portia, Felicity, and Penelope. I just realized that Felicity breaks the trend of Featherington women having a name that starts with a P. Anyways, Colin knows he's missing something, but he doesn't know what it is. It'll be interesting to see how the lack of Felicity changes this beat in the story. Will Portia prefer Devling to Colin as a suitor for Penelope? And will Colin have to then plead his case to her? Will Penn's siblings still try to interfere? Prudence tries to get her to leave the room, and she's like, no thanks. Too much inane conversation happens before Colin is finally like, for God's sake, I need to speak with Portia in private. Penn, you stay, everybody else leave. And he asks Portia if he can marry her daughter, but since he didn't specify which daughter, she assumes that he meant Felicity, and she gets all excited. Colin has to set the record straight, and he tells Portia off for not recognizing how wonderful Penelope is. Penn's like, Colin, you don't need to, and he's like, oh, I need to, because clearly your mother doesn't know how amazing you are. A version of this scene is so necessary for the show, and I do think it'll happen, especially if Portia is resistant to the idea of Colin being a viable suitor for Penelope. This could be how he earns her respect. So there's a part where Portia's like, I love Penelope, of course, but, and Colin interrupts her. He's like, but do you know her? She's lovely and intelligent and has a fine sense of humor. You wouldn't want to marry a woman like that. And I need this, but better. I need Colin to be more specific to prove that he knows Penn better than anyone. I want Portia to know specifically why Penn means the world to him, not just the general kinds of compliment that literally anybody else could give. Wait, y'all, wait, no, okay. I was gonna say what if this is the assuredly, fervently, loudly moment that we get, but I feel like that moment needs to be directed at Penn and not at Portia, but it could be another assuredly, fervently, loudly moment. Honestly, Penn deserves more than one. Anyways, Penn thanks Colin and she finally feels seen and appreciated for who she is, and it's really sweet. Portia congratulates them, and that's the end of the chapter. Hey y'all, we're back in the All Too Well hoodie. I feel like I've been wearing it a lot in this vlog. I'm not feeling the best tonight, but I would like to post this video before season 3 comes out. So we're gonna do our very best, just to do what we can. But if I'm not at my usual energy level, that's why. I'm hoping my excitement for season 3 will help lift my spirits a little bit, but we shall see. We open chapter 15 with Eloise being like, it's a pity that Lady Whistledown is retired because this would have been the coup of the decade, Polin's wedding, that is. And Penn's like, yeah, well, she did say she'd have to retire if I ever married a Bridgerton. And Eloise is like, no, she didn't. And Penn's like, I should know, I wrote it. She doesn't say that. But Eloise gets all offended on Penn's behalf, and there's a sweet moment where Penn says, you're a very good friend, Eloise. And Eloise is like, yes, I know, the very best. Oof, this hurts, doesn't it? I can't wait to see how they tackle this in the show, though. From the trailer, I wonder if Eloise is actually the first of the Bridgertons to clock Colin's feelings for Penn. I kind of like the idea that she'll try to warn him about Lady Whistledown, like after she finds out that he proposed, and he'll already know. Because again, I don't think that they get engaged without him knowing. I feel like Penn would feel way too guilty saying yes without him knowing, I think. Oh, but do they want her to sit in that guilt for the drama? This show loves to hurt me. But Polin's impending marriage could be what forces Penelope to talk things out, make amends, and I can't wait to see how Eloise and their friendship grow from it. Penn notices that Elle has been writing, and she's like, what's all this? And Elle gets really evasive. She's like, nothing, just letters, and she's not taking any further questions at this time. My earlier season 3 theories actually accounted for these letters to be introduced in season 3. A lot of people guessed right away that Eloise's unlikely friend was going to be Cressida, and I always felt like it was the most plausible theory, but I didn't like it. So for as long as I was able to, I clowned about other possibilities. My first theory was, what if Elle reaches out to Marina because they've both been victims of some of Lady Whistledown's most ruinous papers? And I still am forever and always team give Eloise a girlfriend, not Cressida. We're not doing what Blaine did to Kurt. That show was the actual worst when you think about it. Anyways, listen, I knew my theory was always just me clowning, but I was like, what if they had Elle reach out to Marina, they start a friendship, over the course of a couple seasons it grows into something more, and we kill Sir Philip off instead. I feel like book fans are probably gonna hate me for saying that. No, but this is something I genuinely hate about the show, besides how they handle sexual violence, is that they've essentially made Marina an obstacle in two white couples' love stories. First, Colin and Penelope, and they went out of their way to create that storyline for Marina because she doesn't show up on page in the books, as far as I remember from what I've heard from other people who have read the whole series. I believe she dies before Eloise and Sir Philip even start writing to each other. But I hate that they gave her a full storyline in the show only to presumably kill her off in a future season. I don't see how. Maybe they could still write themselves out of that corner, but I doubt it. But this is why colorblind casting gets a lot of criticism, because when you're not being intentional about casting, you're not being intentional about writing, and you can still fall into perpetuating harmful tropes. Just because this show purports itself to be an alternate history doesn't mean that it exists in a vacuum. We have decades of media history leading up to this point that don't just go away because the industry is trying to be more inclusive now. Inclusivity is great, but it needs to go further than that. Writers always need to be mindful about not perpetuating harmful tropes and stereotypes that have been used time and time again against historically excluded communities in storytelling. Anyways, my Marina theory died when I found out that Ruby Barker not only wasn't going to be in season 3, but apparently she had terrible experiences during the production of both seasons 1 and 2 and received no support from Netflix or Shondaland, which I'm not surprised about the Netflix part of it. And I won't say I'm totally surprised by the Shondaland part of it, but I am very disappointed to hear that. I hope she gets the support that she needs on future projects. This is an industry full of creative people. If we can't figure out how to support everyone in it, we're failing as an industry. But yeah, she doesn't seem like she's willing to work on this show again, and I don't blame her. And then of course on top of all of that, she gets all of this misogynoir thrown her way from the Bridgerton fandom because of this storyline that they created for her in season 1. I just hope that she's doing better now and that she has better experiences moving forward. Anyways, so my second theory was, what if they somehow introduced Eloise writing letters to Philip this season? Again, y'all, I wasn't sure how they would make that work, but I just really didn't want it to be Cressida. Wait though, wait. What if Colin's writing letters to Sir Philip? I was really into their nerdy bromance in 204. What if Colin keeps in touch with Philip on his travels? And then maybe later on, he's the one to introduce Eloise to Philip. That could be interesting. I like the idea that like Penn's not responding to his letters, but Sir Philip is. The writers do have their work cut out for them selling me on Philip and Eloise, I will say. Everything I've heard about him in the book, he sounds like the shittiest person in the world. But the little we have seen of him in the show is not bad. I just would love a sapphic relationship on this show. Benedict and Eloise are not straight in my head, okay? There's no way. They're both bi. But I digress. Shit, back to the book. Sorry, y'all, I forgot what we were doing for a second. Eloise opens up to Penn and she's like, I really don't want to come across as a horrible friend because I'm so happy for you and Colin, but I just always thought we'd be spinsters together. And I wonder if Elle will still grapple with this in season 3. Could seeing Penn and Colin happy together make her more open to the idea of marriage, especially after having had feelings for Theo in season 2? I don't want her to get like too close to it because I feel like she still has a lot of growing to do before we get to her season. But some interesting questions to ponder. Essentially, Eloise is worried that she'll be lonely not having Penn by her side because she'll be at Colin's side now, and Penn reassures her that she still has her even if it's going to be different now. Eloise is like, do you hate me? And Penn's like, no, if anything, I love you all the more because I know how difficult it must have been to be honest with me about this. I love this moment because it really makes me think about where their relationship is at going into season 3. And this is why I think the both of them are gonna really grow from this and their friendship will come out the other end even stronger. Because Lady Whistledown is a huge fracture in their friendship. And if they can heal that wound, they can handle pretty much any confrontation, any difficult conversations that they might have in the future. And I love to see it tie into something else that we will talk about in a few chapters. Did y'all forget about the drinking game? Because I almost did. Colin joins them, I think they're in the drawing room, and updates them on wedding prep. At one point he mentioned his mother being so delighted to see me married. I really can't bring myself to spoil her fun. I need a line like this so bad in the show. Colin and Violet's relationship might be my favorite of all the Bridgerton siblings. Colin absolutely adores her. The scene in season 1 where Violet is drunk and Colin's like teasing her for it, and she's like, I'm sober enough to know when you're being impertinent. And the way he says like good night mother is so sweet. So I can't wait to see all of the Colin and Violet scenes in season 3. And like I mentioned before, I'm really hoping that they lean into parallels between Violet and Edmund's relationship and Colin and Penelope's relationship. Eloise leaves them alone, but not before assuring Pen that she has not seen the worst of a Bridgerton sibling spat just yet. And that got me thinking about how Pen hasn't seen them during Pall Mall yet, which gave me 2 headcanons. One, where she joins them for Pall Mall and she's not very good at it, but Colin is genuinely just so proud of everything that she does. 2, she's amazing at it and Colin is so happy to lose to her. Either way, Colin is a simp of the highest order. I do love the Bridgerton competitiveness too though, but I just feel like Pall Mall antagonism is Canthony's thing and I really don't need Polin stepping on their toes. Now they're alone and we get another chin tilt. I love it. So they start making out and it's the first time in Colin's inner monologue where the L word comes up. And he is very surprised by this development. And I said, Colin, you dumb bitch. You were just thinking about how she's the perfect wife for you. What do you think that means? Unfortunately, they gotta stop making out because they're in the drawing room and anybody could walk in. Colin does make sure to reassure Pen that he doesn't want to stop, he just doesn't want them getting into any trouble, which is sweet. We get another iconic moment, another contender for a direct quote in season 3. Pen asking Colin, do I look a mess? And he nods and says, but you're my mess. I will be devastated if this line isn't in the show. I dare say a lot of Polin fans will be. I had to put the lyrics to one of my favorite Polin-coded songs. I loved you in spite of deep fears that the world would divide us. So baby, can we dance? Oh, through an avalanche. And say that we got it. I'm a mess, but I'm the mess that you wanted. From Dancing with Her Hands Tied by Taylor Swift. Y'all have probably noticed that I've been exclusively featuring Taylor Swift lyrics. There's 2 reasons for it. 1, she's very top of the mind with the Tortured Poets release. And 2, a lot of her songs are very Polin coded, but also a lot of her songs are specifically Pen Lady Whistledown coded to me. Okay, chapter 16 is basically just Colin going to visit Daphne to ask how to tell if you're in love with someone. Obviously, we know Daphne is not going to be in season 3 at all, so it'll be interesting to see who takes on this role for Colin. I think it'd be really sweet to have it be Anthony in a sort of passing of the torch moment, kind of like Daphne did for Anthony in season 2, and it could be a cute little Bridgerton show tradition. Although we think Ben's gonna be next, so that would imply that Colin would pass the torch on to Ben. And I kind of like the idea of Colin, you know, playing this role for Eloise. 1, because of what their relationship might evolve into this season. Luke says that he had some great scenes with Claudia. And 2, because of my love for the Colin and Philip bromance that I mentioned earlier. However, I feel like since in the trailer, Colin asked his mother about friendship being the best foundation for love, it might be Violet who helps him get there, which would still be sweet. As I've mentioned before, I really do love the Colin and Violet relationship. There's not a whole lot to say about Colin going to visit Daphne because it's not going to happen in the show, but it is hilarious how he's like, how do you know if it's love? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, how did you know? And she's like, I don't know. And so he says, so what you're saying is that if one doesn't know one's in love, then one probably isn't. That's too many ones in one sentence. My God, okay. Anyways, she's like, no, that's not what I mean at all. And he's like, then what do you mean? And she's like, I don't know. This actually would be funny if Colin goes to Anthony first because he sees how in love with Kate Anthony is. And Anthony is entirely unhelpful, much like Daphne in this scene. And so then Colin goes to Violet instead and gets better results. I get so annoyed with a lot of the dialogue in this book, but this scene is so fucking funny to me, so Great job, Julia Quinn, on this scene specifically. Oof, so we gotta talk about the engagement ball, which we have a moment where we find out that Colin insisted on inviting Cressida to witness Penelope's triumph, and that made me think, oof, what if Penn and Elle are still on the outs at the engagement ball and she invites Cressida to hurt Penn? I hope not. Anyways, when Elle finds out why Colin wanted Cressida there, she goes, oh my word, my brother is in love. Again, I want Elle to be the first to clock it, even if Penelope are still fighting. Penn's obviously not sure of his feelings because he hasn't told her yet, but she wonders if actions speak louder than words, and maybe Elle is right. Lady Danbury joins Penn and Eloise, and they have some back and forth, but eventually Lady Danbury says, it's rather nice to see two girls who'd rather embrace than stab each other in the back. And this got me thinking, what if Lady Danbury intervenes in the Penelope's feud and it somehow ties back into the tension that's been going on between Lady Danbury and Violet, to make it a moment about the importance of female friendship and the importance of confronting difficult conversations head on, because Lady Danbury and Violet certainly love to dance around the tension. Colin interrupts because it's almost time for Antony to give a toast and for Polin to share a dance. But unfortunately, an unexpected surprise derails the night in the form of Lady Whistledown's final column. The very one that Polin were fighting about a few chapters ago, and that fight was never resolved. I've been very skeptical this entire time about the whole Lady Whistledown bounty storyline, but I'm starting to second guess myself. And it all started with this little teaser that Netflix Latin America posted and then took down. And the What a Barb Instagram account was speculating from this leak that Penn might run from a ball because Debling's just proposed to her and she either rejects it or asks for a little more time to think about it. And then on top of that, the Queen's bounty on Whistledown is announced, and Penn is just so overwhelmed that she runs from the ball, and Colin runs after her, which leads to a carriage chase, which leads to the carriage scene. This is all on the Mayday highlight of their Instagram if anybody wants to check it out. Again, I'll leave them linked down below. And they said that Luke describes the carriage scene as a confession, perhaps the moment Colin confesses his feelings for Penn. But this got me spiraling because I saw confession and immediately thought Whistledown. And then the idea that she's running from the ball because of the proposal and the Queen's bounty, like she's stressed the fuck out. And Colin's gonna wanna help her, and he might say something like, I love you, let me help you. And then she's even more overwhelmed by his confession that she just blurts out that she's Lady Whistledown. And I've always been team Colin finding out about Lady Whistledown is the cliffhanger of episode 4, rather than the carriage scene being the cliffhanger. But y'all, what if it's both? Having said that though, if I think about the last 2 seasons, they really like to stretch out the big suspenseful questions that are gonna be a threat to the relationship. Like in season 1, the big question was, how long is it gonna take for Daphne to find out that Simon's been withholding the full truth about having kids? And that's revealed at the end of episode 6. Season 2, we're asking how far is Antony gonna take things with Edwina before she finds out about his and Kate's feelings for each other? And again, we find out at the wedding in episode 6. As of right now, we don't know of a bigger question to ask in season 3 than how long is it gonna take for Colin to find out about Lady Whistledown. So maybe I am wrong about the Lady Whistledown reveal being the episode 4 cliffhanger. But y'all, I have a hard time considering the carriage scene in and of itself the cliffhanger. I mean, we don't yet know what the show's version of the carriage scene looks like, and I definitely shouldn't underestimate the writers, but I don't know. I think it's because this is something that we're all so heavily anticipating that if it happens, and we now know that it does, then it just happened. Like at one point before I knew that the carriage scene was in episode 4, I thought the cliffhanger was that the carriage scene was about to happen, but didn't happen yet. And we would all be like, seriously, we have to wait another month for the carriage scene? Since we know we're getting it, I'm like, so then what's the cliffhanger? All right, that's all I have for 16. Let's move on to chapter 17, shall we? Okay, so obviously Colin is angry, but he can't show it because it's their engagement ball and they're supposed to be happy and in love in front of everybody. This issue of Lady Whistledown wasn't supposed to come out for a few more days, but unfortunately Penn's publisher went rogue on her. Colin's gripping her arm so hard that he thinks there will be a bruise the next day. I hate it. He knew he was hurting her. He knew it wasn't a terribly nice thing that he was hurting her. Gross. Stop it. I hate it. He notices that Penn is really pale, and he should know from that alone that she didn't mean for this to come out on the night of their engagement ball. Colin takes a glass of champagne and puts it to Penn's mouth and forces her to drink it until she finishes it. He acknowledges that it is a childish display of power, but still, I hate this part the most. Book Colin gives me emotional whiplash. One chapter, I'm like, oh, sweet. And then the next chapter, I'm like, I hate you, go away. They have their dance, and then they cut out of the ball early. Colin brings her up to his room so they can have it out. He says, it was rather clever timing, actually, waiting until our engagement ball to make your final announcement. You knew I didn't want you to publish that last column. I forbade it. We agreed. And she's like, we never agreed. I am fully on Penn's side here. Colin has assumed that his word was law on this issue as if she can't make her own damn decisions, and he has not tried to see this from her point of view, as she later points out. My hope is that the season 2 finale and their lesson together will help him empathize with her more, and that he won't act like this as much during their fights in the show, because it never goes anywhere except in circles, and I hate it. They go back and forth, and she tries to explain to him, this is my life's work. This is all I have to show for my life, and if I can't take the credit for it, I'll be damned if someone else will. This is one of the biggest reasons I don't think Lady Whistledown will be revealed to the entire ton in season 3. I keep saying it, but Book Pen has been doing this for over a decade. Show Pen has only been doing this for going into 3 years now. 1, I think she still has more work to do, and 2, I think she has more to learn from Lady Whistledown. I think it could be a great vehicle for character growth for her in season 3, and I don't want it to end before she can fully realize that growth. Hearing her talk about this being her life's work is what finally gets through to him. He thinks she was amazing, and he was. Dear God above, he was jealous of her. This is so interesting. I really would like them to explore this. Perhaps another reason for Show Colin to be upset about the Lady Whistledown reveal. Penn's like, I'll just go. But when he saw her hand on the doorknob, he knew he could not let her go. Not this night, not ever. He asked her to stay and forget what he said, and that was when he realized that Daphne had been right. His love hadn't been a thunderbolt from the sky. It had started with a smile, a word, a teasing glance. Every second he had spent in her presence, it had grown until he reached this moment, and he suddenly knew he loved her. So I don't love that a fight is what gets him to realize he loves her, but I do like how it's the prospect of possibly losing her as she's about to leave. And I do think that the show is still gonna go for that in a sense. Whether the fight is still that epiphany moment for him remains to be seen, but I do feel like him asking Violet about friendship being the best possible foundation for love kind of implies that he gets there before they fight about Whistledown. So we'll see. Obviously, I don't love this fight in the book, but I do like how he realizes that what matters most in this moment isn't being right, but being together. This is a real shift in the conflict between them, not entirely for the better, but partially. We end this chapter with him repeatedly asking her to stay, and she nods. Hey y'all, I'm feeling a little better, so let's knock out the rest of this vlog, shall we? So we're on chapter 18, and this is their first time being fully intimate with each other. They've had some heavy makeout, some heavy petting, but tonight they're gonna go all the way. It's a pretty sweet scene, but I feel like the show's gonna be even better. There is a moment where he's like, I never dreamed you would look this way, and she's like, what do you mean by that? And I'm not gonna read the whole quote, but essentially he's like, I've thought of this moment 1,000 times and nothing could ever possibly live up to reality. And you know, he really almost put his foot in it again there, but that was some good recovery, Colin. I don't really want this part in the show. I don't think it's really necessary, but I did want to acknowledge that moment of growth for book Colin. Colin mentions wanting to do it in front of a mirror. It doesn't actually happen in the book, but we do have confirmation of a mirror scene in season 3. Y'all, I'm not ready for this. She tells Colin she loves him, and he says it back, and she's like, you don't have to say it just because I said it. And he's like, I know, and you know that too. You said you know me better than you know yourself, and you know I would never say the words if I didn't mean them. I do love this. They talk about it a little more, but we don't really need to cover all of it. I just wanted to highlight that part of it. Yeah, so they do, they're in love, and that's chapter 18. All right, chapter 19. Okay, so Chaos Colin strikes again, and he goes to Violet and Portia's like, we might need to move up the wedding date. Even though it's highly unlikely that Pen got pregnant from just the one time, he implies that there's more of a risk than there actually is just because he wants to be married to Pen as soon as possible. I hope they keep this in the show. This is funny to me. However, Colin has decided that he's just gonna straight up avoid the Lady Whistledown issue for as long as he possibly can. My hope is that the season is so jam-packed that they literally don't have time for him to avoid the issue. I'd rather them face it head on than it just be this massive elephant in the room for so long. Especially because since he won't talk to her, she thinks that he's ashamed of her. And literally in the last chapter, he just had this epiphany about how amazing she is that she's been able to pull this off for so long and how wonderful a writer she is. We switch into Colin's point of view about this issue, and we learn that he always thought that his ability to help others feel good about themselves must have come from his own sense of self. But he's been thrown so off kilter by this jealousy that he feels towards Pen and the shame that he feels for that jealousy that he's snapping at Pen, he's barely speaking at parties. And I do think this is interesting because Pen is more equipped than anybody to help him navigate these feelings. She knows how it feels to be unsettled in your sense of self. That's what led to Lady Whistledown in the first place. And she knows that the solution to all of this is for him to pursue his own writing. Back in Pen's perspective, she's trying to give him a lot more grace than I think he deserves in this particular situation. She tried not to feel so disappointed. She tried to tell herself that she had no right to expect Colin to live up to her dream, that her vision of him had been unfairly idealized. And I really hope that by the time they're married in the show, that the scales of their relationship won't still be so uneven. I hope that by rebuilding their friendship first, she won't still have such lofty expectations of him. He is human. And while I get impatient with him for avoiding the Lady Whistledown issue, I'm also a little impatient with Pen for how long it's taken her to adjust her perception of him. The chapter ends with Pen asking Colin if they'll go on a honeymoon, and he says yes, but he'd like to be in town to control the damage if her secret gets out, so the honeymoon will have to wait. We open chapter 20 with Pen returning back from a shopping trip and Colin's acting all squirrely. He's been reading his journals. Pen asks if she can read a passage of his choosing. She tries to bond with him over the feeling of choosing the right words after staring so long at a blank page, and she tries to encourage him, but he's still just not ready to share more. She's disappointed, but reassures him that it's okay. He wants to, but he's just scared, and he worries that if someone does publish his work, it'll only be because of the Bridgerton name. Yet another Benedict and Colin inner conflict parallel. Later that evening, though, he finally comes around, and he picks a passage from when he went to visit Francesca in Scotland. He's hovering over her, trying to add commentary, and she's like, my love, please just let me read. He goes off into a corner, starts tapping his foot. She's like, dude, you gotta stop. Finally, she's able to read the passage, and as I was reading it, it occurred to me that perhaps Colin and Pen can make this trip to see Francesca together, because presumably she'll be meeting and marrying John this season as well. I do think in the show they're going to want to start a family as soon as possible, but Scotland's not as difficult a trip to pull off as the continent before they need to settle down and raise the next Lord Featherington. They start debating where they should go for their honeymoon. I'm obviously team Italy. For anybody who doesn't know, I am Italian American. I have family in Rome. I love Rome. I miss Rome. Colin finally tells Pen that he loves her writing. And obviously we love that Colin enjoys her writing, but in the book specifically he says, "You write about society of all things, and you make it fun and interesting and witty when we all know that more often than not, it's beyond dull." I mean, I find the Lady Whistledown excerpts in this book to be mostly, if not entirely dull, but I'm glad he disagrees. However, Show Colin, on the other hand, loves gossip. So I love the idea that after the initial betrayal of the Lady Whistledown reveal, he's actually quite turned on by it. And he'll get to be the first to read the next Lady Whistledown issue and, of course, get a gossip boner. Pen then goes on to tell Colin how she started Lady Whistledown. I do wonder if we'll get some of this backstory in the show. I don't think it's totally necessary, but it could still be interesting. She mentions that in order to actually be able to spend her earnings, she essentially gave it to her mother by pretending that it was part of an estate that was left to them by one of their relatives who passed. Colin wants to comment on how he doesn't think Portia deserved that kindness, but he thinks to himself, Portia Featherington was Penelope's mother, and if Penelope wanted to love her, he wasn't going to stop her. I do think I want some sort of reconciliation for Portia and Penelope, not for Portia's sake, but for Pen's. And not necessarily a total redemption arc, but more so vindication for Pen. They plan to set aside the rest of the Whistledown money for their children, and we end the chapter with Penelope confessing to Colin that she's been holding him to unfair standards. We actually get a really great quote from her. "You're the imperfect man of my heart, and that's even better. I'd always thought you infallible, that your life was charmed, that you had no worries or fears or unfulfilled dreams, but that wasn't really fair of me." This is what I've been waiting for from Pen. I obviously don't think I need to worry as much about Pen taking forever to get to this point in the show. I think Colin's well and truly knocked off the pedestal after the end of season 2. But going back to my theory of Colin also putting Pen on a pedestal, it might be nice once the scales of their relationship are a little bit more balanced, having a scene where they acknowledge what it took to get there. But that's it for chapter 20. At the beginning of chapter 21, Pen is making some notes on Colin's journals, and I really love the idea of them becoming each other's editors. Unfortunately, her day is interrupted by a visit from Cressida. And though she takes an annoyingly long time to get to the point, Cressida has figured out that Pen is Lady Whistledown because the words that she used in her column were the exact same words that she said to Cressida's face when Cressida tried to claim to be her. She basically extorts Pen, either give me 10,000 pounds, which Pen most certainly does not have, or I tell everyone it's you. Again, I don't think that Pen's identity will be under any real threat in the show. I actually am coming around to the idea that Lady Danbury finds out and vouches for Pen with Queen Charlotte. And if Cressida did find out, maybe either Eloise ends up mediating a truce between them, or Queen Charlotte can be like, back off. But again, I'm highly skeptical of any true threat to the continuation of Lady Whistledown. I think she's too important to the show, but I could be wrong. Pen tells Colin when he gets home what happened with Cressida, and she's like, it's all my fault. And he's like, no, it's not your fault. And I do like that switch up that he does. I like that he doesn't rub it in her face that he was right, because he was right. He knew Cressida was gonna take that column as a challenge. Colin promises that he'll take care of everything, but Pen wants to help, so she suggests asking Lady Danbury if she'll take the fall for her. And Colin's like, we're not doing that unless there's literally no other option. Colin gets ready to leave to try and figure out how to fix all of this, and Pen's like, you can't think about it here with me. And here we get probably one of, if not the most famous Colin lines in the book in response. He just reassures her, I love you. I love you with everything I am, everything I've been, and everything I hope to be. I love you with my past, and I love you for my future. I love you for the children we'll have and for the years we'll have together. I love you for every one of my smiles, and even more for every one of your smiles. It's sweet, and honestly, I'd be surprised if this doesn't make it in the show. It has been quoted in many a fanfic. However, the Bridgerton writers' room are no slouch. when it comes to big love declarations on their show, so they could still decide to come up with their own. Book fans, would y'all hate it if they did that? I'm obviously not super attached to the books. I have certain scenes that I want to see and certain beats I want them to hit, but I'm open to them being reinterpreted and reimagined in different ways. That's the whole fun of adaptation for me. I'm not super invested in things being exactly as they are in the books. Even though we do know we're getting a lot of direct quotes this season, a lot of the direct quotes that I'm like most hopeful for are pretty minor. Like I really want the lines that I think could be great Dankworth lines, but I suppose in terms of Polin quotes, the one I want the most is probably "But you're my meth." So Colin goes to see Antony to see if he can help resolve the issue and promises to meet Penelope at Daphne's ball, which we are obviously not getting this season. But I do think a lot of us are wondering if we're going to get the masquerade ball where Ben meets Sophie for the first time. I haven't done that much speculating for Ben because obviously this is Polin's book and he doesn't really come up a whole lot. But we know something's going on with him and, is her name Tilly Arnold or something? I wonder if that ends up really badly and he's like absolutely wrecked by it, but then he meets Sophie at the ball and he has hope again, but then obviously loses her and we set him up for season 4. I don't know. I honestly have no idea what to expect for Ben this season. Colin arranges for Penn to go to the ball with Eloise, Hyacinth, and Violet and instructs them not to leave her side for any reason, and they're all like, what is going on? And Penn, not really knowing what Colin's up to, is able to play it off as if she's totally clueless. She's not totally clueless, but she genuinely doesn't know what Colin's planning. They arrive at the ball and Daphne's like, hey, what's going on? And there's more repetitive dialogue about how nobody knows what Colin's up to. We can skip all of that. Eloise does leave her post, and we don't know this yet, but she's left to go meet up with Sir Philip. This is obviously not likely to happen in season 3. Like I said, I think Ben's next, and we are a ways away still from Eloise's season. Colin returns and plays coy with everyone, and Penn's like, you are not going to waltz in here and distract me with a clever phrase and a beguiling smile. And he's like, you think my smile is beguiling? And I told Colin that's Antony's line. Polin are still my favorite, but they are not allowed to step on Antony's toes. Colin gets Penn alone and she's like, are you gonna tell me what's going on now? And he's like, no, I'm gonna kiss you. We have Chaos Colin in full form tonight and we would like some more, please. She finally gets him to stop and is like, okay, you gotta tell me what the plan is. And he's like, I'm gonna tell everyone that you're Lady Whistledown before Cressida can. And she's like, no, you can't do that. What if it hurts your chances of being published? And he reassures her that everything will be okay. Whatever happens, they have each other now. She finds out that he told Antony, who was surprised and rather pleased and couldn't wait to tell Kate. Again, I'm still skeptical of too many people finding out about her identity, but I do also love the idea of all the Bridgertons being in on it. I also like the idea of only Colin and Eloise being in on it for a while, and then later the rest of the Bridgertons find out before she retires or is exposed or whatever happens. We'll just have to see. So Colin goes out and is like, hello everyone, I'm a newlywed, so you will all have to indulge me as I tell you how amazing my wife is. Assuredly, fervently, loudly. He also kisses her in front of everyone, and I wrote in all caps, scandalous chaos Colin bravissimo. And then he's like, my wife is so amazing, in fact, that she's Lady Whistledown and none of y'all knew. And there's total silence. And then Lady Danbury starts clapping. And then Antony joins in, and then the rest of the Bridgertons, and then the rest of the ton. So suck it, Cressida. We finally reach the epilogue. Colin gets his first copies of his first book, An Englishman in Italy. Great start, Colin. I approve. We find out that Penn, having missed writing since retiring Whistledown, has been working on a novel. I would actually love this for show Penn when she is ready to retire and or maybe pass the torch for Lady Whistledown. Whistledown. I think Eloise plants the idea in her head earlier on in the book. I can't decide if I would rather it still be Eloise who does that in the show, or if I want Colin to suggest it, or if I want Pen to just think of it on her own. But we are finally at the end of this vlog, y'all. I thought we'd never make it. I'm not gonna cover the second epilogue because it's not really about Polin. I mean, there are obviously Polin moments in it, but it kind of goes into Eloise's story, because when she ditched Pen at the ball, she left to go meet up with Sir Philip, and now they're getting married too. But Eloise missed the Lady Whistledown announcement, so everyone's like, when's the right time to tell her? I don't really feel like talking about any of that because I feel like I've said all I need to say about this book and season 3, and I'm tired. Hey y'all, so I mentioned that I filmed a trailer reaction when it first came out, and that I do like a little breakdown of it after showing the initial reaction. So that's gonna be the last part of this vlog, and yeah, then we're done. So I hope y'all enjoy. Alrighty y'all, let's see if we can do a little reaction to the season 3 trailer. Okay, don't hover over it now. Oh my god. Okay. It's been a while since I've used OBS, so hopefully quality-wise there aren't any issues. I've done my best to test it out with the season 2 trailer, as you can see. So yeah, okay. I'm scared. Let's get into it though. Okay.
Dearest gentle reader, we have been apart for far too long.
Yeah.
At last, London's fashionable set has made its return. And it seems that our bon ton is moving with the changing tide. So, too, is this author.
I cannot live at home any longer. I must take a husband.
Does my lady have a suit?
Okay, y'all, I need to... I'm still sure... Okay, so the Cressida and Eloise theory was correct, and I need to process that. So I think I actually need to go back a little bit, because I feel... Oh my god, what? I mean, like, it's the theory that has made the most sense. It has been the most plausible. Oh my
Changing
god.
tide. So, too,
Poor
is
Pen.
this
Oh
author.
my love.
I cannot live at home any longer. I must take a husband.
Does my lady have a suitor in mind?
Is that our brother?
Colin?
Brother. Under what foreign sun did you apparently get so sturdy?
What?
Oh, it is good to see
I cannot process the fact that I've seen shirtless Colin in a trailer.
Is it?
something wrong.
Seems as though every Bridgerton was born to attract notice. For some of us, notice is very slight.
If a husband is what you seek, let me help you. Are we not friends?
Friends.
I should like to see your skills as they are first.
How delightful to see you all. The splendid weather we are having.
Oh, babe.
I would not be angry if you found me to be a lost cause.
You must not say such things. You are Penelope Featherington. Do not forget that.
She's not seeking a husband in you, I hope.
No, I'm only helping her find one.
Since when are you worried about Penelope?
What this author knows to be true is that diamonds are not the only gems that sparkle.
Ooh, those sparkly gloves. Yeah. Okay, so this is episode 1. We've seen the clip of her being upset.
Lord Debbling. He is eager to take a wife this season.
You look especially beautiful tonight, Miss Featherington.
You have done very well, Penelope. What more could you want?
Mother, do you believe the best foundation for love is friendship?
It is rare, but you must follow your heart.
What is the primary force that guides us along our paths?
Penelope.
Is it our minds or our hearts?
Oh my god. Oh my god. That was so much. That was so much, y'all. Okay, I think we're gonna need to watch it again because I I don't even understand what I just saw. I feel like there wasn't much going on reaction wise because I was just in shock. Alrighty, y'all. So it's been several weeks since the trailer dropped. And so I've watched this several more times. I've had plenty of time to process. So let's see if I can form more coherent thoughts about it this time. I love this shot. It's so cool.
Dearest,
Colin.
gentle reader, we have been apart for far too long. At last, London's fashionable set has made its return. And it seems that our...
Okay, yes, we're pausing here. So obviously I'm so excited to see Married Anthony. I'm happy. This is like what I'm the most ready for because we've already dealt with the bulk of their relationship turmoil in season 2. Now we just get to see them be happy together. And I also wanted to say this is my favorite outfit that we've seen so far for Kate. I think it's so pretty. Although they did recently release some promo about like the wardrobe for this season. And what Simone is wearing for her interview portions of that promo, we can't see the full outfit, we can't see the full dress, but I feel like it might dethrone this outfit. What we have seen of it is really pretty. Oh, Will and Alex, I'm so excited to see more from them this season and their kids. Like we saw a little bit of them in season 2, but we haven't seen their kids since season 1. So I'm really excited to see more of their family dynamic. Really, really intrigued by what's in store for them this season.
Moving with the changing tide. So too is this author.
I've said all
I cannot live at home any longer.
about that.
I must take...
Wait, no, hold on. Let's go back. Can we take a moment? Okay, this is going to be so great. I cannot wait for Prudent. That is, we needed a moment to appreciate this because this has so much potential. I cannot wait.
I must take a husband.
I love that green dress.
Have a suitor in mind?
Is that our brother?
Colin?
Okay, so something about me. My least favorite thing in any historical romance is when somebody kisses somebody else's hand. I hate this gesture so much. To me, it feels like putting on airs, like you're trying to be charming, and it never feels sincere. I hate the performance of it all, I guess. Although it does make sense for Colin, you know, this is Pirate Colin. He's just come back from his travels and he's feeling all confident and I think a lot of his like initial scenes are going to be very much him putting on the charm. And like this is also our first look at Pirate Colin. So I'm mad at him for making me attracted to him while he's doing something that I don't like. She's super pretty. That I could not wear that outfit. I cannot imagine having so much going on around my neck. I feel a little suffocated just looking at it, but she's so pretty. And I like those earrings. Oh, and the hairpiece. Okay. See, this is what happens when you pause. You notice the detail.
Brother, under what foreign sun did you apparently get so sturdy?
I love that all the Bridgerton boys are in one carriage. I cannot wait to see the rest of this scene.
It's good to see you.
Is it?
Go back. Oh my gosh, too quick. Okay, so I do love that we have another interaction between them pre-glow up, clearly, and so before Goodnight, Mr. Bridgerton, where she's acting all cold and distant. I cannot wait to see the build up to Goodnight, Mr. Bridgerton. It's going to be so great.
Good to see you.
Is it?
Something wrong?
Seems as though every Bridgerton was born to attract notice. For some of us, notice is
I
very
love that
slight.
blue dress.
If a husband is what you seek, let me help you. Are we not friends?
Friends.
Beautiful performance already from Nicola.
I should like to see your
that's
skills as they
heartbreaking.
are first.
How delightful to see you all. The splendid weather we are having.
His face too. He's like, this is not my pen. What's going on here?
I would not be angry if you found me to be a lost cause.
You must not say such things. You are Penelope Featherington. Do not forget that.
I think I talked earlier on in the vlog about how book Colin is surprised by Penelope's boldness, by her wit, and show Colin isn't. Like, show Colin has always seen that side of her, and I think it's more surprising to him that she struggles to be that version of herself in front of other people, because it's always been so easy between the two of them. And so show Colin knows that Penelope's had it in her all along to be just as charming as he is.
She's not seeking a husband in you, I hope.
No, I'm only helping her find one.
Since when are you worried about Penelope?
Elle, maybe if you paid more attention to Penn last season, you would have seen their friendship has been, growing for quite a while. Also, excuse you, okay, this thing never pauses when I want it to pause. We need a moment to appreciate the hand cut scene, although we don't think he's cut his hand. We think he's burned his hand, I think. Oh my god, I can't wait for this scene.
What this author knows to be true is that diamonds are not the only gems that sparkle.
Again, I love the sparkly gloves. Like, I think because I hadn't noticed that in the original, like, Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton clip, or in the Canthony clip when we have that shot of her looking uncomfortable. But I like that we have the close-up on the sparkly gloves, because I didn't know they were sparkly, and I like that. She looks so pretty. Oh, wait. Okay, so we need to see if we can get this where we want it. There we go. Okay, yay. Finally, y'all, it took me forever to get to this specific frame. Okay, so obviously, like, Portia, Philippa, and Prudence are not into the whole wardrobe change for Penn, but can we just take a moment to appreciate Cheese Man being supportive of Penn's new look? I cannot. These two, they're the best. They're the best. That's all I have to say.
Lord Debling. He is eager to take a wife this.
Every time I see this shot of her smiling, I want to cry. It makes me so happy.
You look especially beautiful tonight, Miss Featherington.
That's Enchanted Pen, but that's not Enchanted Pen. Hold on. What?
He is eager to take a wife this season.
You look especially beautiful tonight.
Okay, that's Enchanted Pen,
Miss Featherington.
but that's not Enchanted Pen. Okay.
You have done very well, Penelope.
Oh, my love. This is like, I don't know if it's necessarily like exactly what she would have wanted to hear from Portia, because like the way she says it, it's like, well, she's surprised, obviously, and I'm not surprised because I love. This is obviously a moment where she should be feeling like so happy, and she's not, and my heart breaks for her.
What more could you want?
Mother, do you believe the best foundation for love is friendship?
It is rare, but you must follow your heart.
So a couple things to talk about here. One, okay, so first of all, the way that the dialogue sounds, both for Colin and for Violet, it sounds cut together for the sake of getting the point across in the trailer. So I feel like there is a little bit more to that conversation maybe. Obviously, we really wanted this scene because back in season 1, Violet tells Daphne that, friendship is the best foundation for marriage. And I believe Colin was in the room when she said it. I don't remember because I don't really rewatch season 1. But we were all hoping for that to come back in season 3. And so I'm glad that we do get this scene. I did kind of want it to be like a more intimate scene, not at a ball, but I can see that maybe this is a turning point for Colin where he feels like he's running out of time, and so he asked Violet at this ball because got to do something before. Is this what he's wearing when he's running out? In that other, we've seen a clip when he's like running out of a ball, presumably chasing after Penn. Is this what he's wearing? Is that same ball? I'm not as good at keeping track of all the different balls as the host of the What a Barb Polin podcast.
Rare, but you must follow your heart.
Oh, my love. I did not mean to pause on Shirtless Colin. I meant to pause on Window Pen. She's so beautiful.
What is the primary force that guides?
Oh, okay. So obviously I've been talking a lot about how I want to see the parallels between Violet and Edmund and Colin and Penelope this season. But Violet and Edmund obviously play a huge role in all of the Bridgerton sibling love stories, just in different ways. So I'm excited to see how it plays out for Francesca, not only in this season, but when we get to her season, how it compares, maybe. That could be very interesting to see. I haven't read her book either. I am hesitant to read another Julia Quinn book because I don't tend to like the men in them. But of the ones that I haven't read, Francesca is the one I've been most tempted to read.
us along our paths?
Okay, so we need to talk about this too. Okay, so obviously we know I'm excited about this. First of all, let's go on him because excuse you, he's handsome. That little smile that he does, that makes me feel things. I am so excited to see how all of this pans out as well. So I think he's Lady Danbury's brother, and something went down between them that we don't know about, and it's going to be like a source of tension between Violet and Lady Danbury, and obviously Lady Danbury and her brother. But another source of tension for Violet and Lady Danbury, in addition to the Queen Charlotte reveal of Lady Danbury having been with Violet's father. So I'm excited to see how all of that pans out. That was so sweet. Okay, the end of this, I can't.
Is it our minds or our hearts?
Oh, my love. Oh, he looks like he's about to cry. Literally, I don't feel like this is any more coherent. Maybe it's a little bit more coherent than the initial reaction, but I still feel like I've seen this trailer so many times, and every time I'm like still overwhelmed by everything that happened. There's so much in this trailer. That's it. So I guess I'll send you all back to outro Nat because I have nothing left to say. I just need it to be May 16th. So if you've made it through all of this with me, boy do I appreciate it. This was just something that I really needed to get out of my system. Feel free to speculate or spiral with me down in the comments. We're so close, y'all. We're gonna have all the answers soon. We have just had a huge influx of press come in, and I've been trying to avoid it because this video is already too long and I can't risk needing to talk about all of that in this video. I need to just post this video hopefully by Wednesday. But I'm so excited. I'm also scared because of this two-part release that we are dealing with. That's it for today's video. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, make sure to click that subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye!